You're listening to the Conversations with KidsPeace podcast. Advice, information, and inspiration from experts at the leading provider of mental and behavioral health services for children, adults, and those who love them. Now, here's your host.
The Conversations with KidsPeace podcast is sponsored by Spyglass Solutions, a nationally recognized management consulting group with comprehensive experience in the challenges of the healthcare field. Learn more at spyglasssolutions.org/conversations.
Hello and welcome to our podcast series, Conversations with KidsPeace. I'm Bob Martin. The word oasis specifically means a fertile area of water amid a desert, but it's come to mean in abstract anything that provides refuge or relief. Spyglass Solutions, the consulting practice affiliated with KidsPeace, is following that second meeting with a new collection of services under the Oasis name to help businesses build a better workplace environment. To discuss Oasis, we welcome a couple of our good friends of the podcast, Jody Whitcomb and Ben Stiefel. Hi, everybody. Glad to have you with us.
Good morning.
Thanks, Bob.
Jody, let me start with you and just sort of give us kind of a grounding of this. How would you describe Oasis? What are these programs and activities under that umbrella meant to do?
Well, they're meant to really help soothe people of their tension that they experience in their everyday work. And if you're a person that's in school, a younger person, maybe soothe the tension that arises in everyday schoolwork or in the school day. We really take a lot of time to vet all of the items and the activities and make sure that they are absolutely the best items that can be used for this purpose. So we don't just throw a bunch of items together in a box and call it Oasis. We definitely spend a lot of time really trying them out and getting people's feedback on them to see like what really works, what really doesn't work, so that people can engage in these activities and really find things that work for them, because everybody is different. And so that's why we have so many different items and activities for people to try during the Oasis process.
The origin of Oasis is KidsPeace's efforts in the past to support communities that have suffered major traumatic events. And we've talked about this, the critical incident response team, on our podcast before. But the new iteration that we're calling Oasis is really taking an approach towards a focus on self-care. Why is that important?
Well, it's important because, in our line of work, and when I say our line of work, we could be talking about mental health, behavioral health, special education, regular education, healthcare in general. It's a type of work that really is very, very demanding. And it really takes a lot out of you, and you're giving a lot of yourself when you're doing the work. You're a caregiver, okay? And so at the end of the day, you can feel especially exhausted, not just physically, but also mentally and emotionally. And so over time, you develop something called compassion fatigue. And that just means that, you've given so much of yourself that you become tired, you become emotionally tired. And that can lead to other things like burnout. Or maybe you've been listening to people's traumatic stories so many times over and over again that you can actually have some of that trauma transfer onto yourself, and that can be damaging to a person, maybe to a lesser degree than the person that it happened to, but to a certain extent, and you can have something called vicarious trauma. And those things are real. They affect us as professionals. And so we need a place or a way to work those things out. And again, as I said before, everybody's different. Not everybody does that in the same way. And so we developed Oasis so that people could try different methods in order to see what works for them. And so Oasis Space is a way for people to come and try different things at different stations and see, well, this is something I might go home and buy, or this is an app that I might go ahead and download to my iPad or my iPhone or, my Android, and go ahead and use this on a regular basis. Or this is a musical instrument that I want to have in my home because it's really soothing to me, or so on and so forth. And the reason why it's so important to do that is because you need to fill yourself up again so that when the next day, when you go back to work and you're giving and giving of yourself and you're hearing those stories, that you don't end up at the end of the rope with burnout, that you're able to continue giving in a safe way that's healthy for you.
I should point out too, I mentioned critical incident response team. That was the former name. It's now Oasis response team. It is part of the Oasis, package of services, and we'll talk that in a moment. Ben, we're recording this on the week of International Self-Care Day 2021. Why do you think companies and organizations are becoming interested in promoting better self-care among their employees?
Yeah, Bob, I think it's a great question. And if we can go back in time, say 2 years, call it pre-COVID, organizations, for the most part, were more likely to take a passive approach towards self-care. It would be discussed, it would be emphasized in trainings, it would be talked about in supervision sessions with professionals. I think call it the silver lining to the COVID-19 pandemic is that there is a greater connection than ever, especially in our world, as Jody mentioned, in healthcare and education, that employers are more directly connecting with their employees. And that has taken the form in trying to gain a better understanding of what employees need in order to maintain their day-to-day production, be able to come to work every day or work from home every day, despite the chaos and craziness that COVID has introduced to our lives seemingly overnight. And hopefully that level of interest and dedication from these organizations continues well into the future, because we're seeing a really dramatic shift in employee satisfaction and productivity, a decline in turnover rates. It's really become the focus of a lot of HR departments and other retention departments to, instead of focused on recruitment and what is it going to take to get the next new employee in the door, that dynamic is now focused on how do we keep people with us. And the quality of work-life balance is a term that has been thrown around a lot in the last 12 months. And employees more than ever are beginning to understand how that impacts them, not just during the workday and the work week, but also in their personal lives and on the weekends when they're trying to compartmentalize their work responsibilities to their personal and social responsibilities. So having the level of interest directly from the employer where self-care, and Jody gave us all those great buzzwords, all of the areas in life that can be impacted through the work that we're doing, the emotionally charged work that we're doing, that needs an outlet, we need a support system in order to take care of our people, that a company, whether big, small, medium, is only as good as the people that we have on the front lines performing our work on a day-to-day basis, and the overall well-being and satisfaction of those staff is going to provide the biggest impact to our overall organization's mission.
That's an interesting way of looking at the aftermath of the pandemic, in that in so many different ways, we're seeing sort of threads of things we knew about becoming together and weaving together into, more of a priority list, if you will, of things. Not to say that we not say that we didn't need this stuff before the pandemic, because the pandemic allowed us to look at it a little bit more closely. And along those lines, now the centerpiece of your effort is what you're calling the Oasis Certification. And Jody, can you describe what's involved with that?
Yeah, so we're making Oasis Space available, which is a completely mobile kit of supplies that can be set up and torn down in under 30 minutes. Okay. And so when an organization purchases that kit, it comes along with a certification that we will teach you how to utilize that and how to help people who are coming to use the supplies and the activities in that kit. And so you come to the training, and we'll not only teach you the skills about how to set it up, how to help people use it, but also the theory behind how it works and why it works, so that you can facilitate in making sure that it's working correctly. We'll also be teaching you some types of processing with people who have experienced really traumatic events, because sometimes you have type 1 traumas where it's just one event that has occurred. And sometimes people will be coming in to your Oasis space who are really been experiencing just high stress environments day after day after day. And so the way you may utilize that environment and facilitate would be different with those individuals than someone who has experienced a type 1 trauma. And so the certification really helps you diagnose the difference between those two, helps you know what to provide, whether it be an individual or a small group of people. And it just provides a lot of tools for the certified individual so that you're fully prepared when something does happen in your environment, whether it's a school or an agency or so on.
It's interesting that we talk about this, and obviously it's a very serious topic, very important, but I don't want to make it ponderous here. And I wonder if you can talk a little bit, when you get that package of tools, they're fun things, aren't they?
Sure. Yeah.
What kind of things would somebody get once they go through the process of the certification and everything, and they get their Oasis kit? What would surprise them as they open that up?
Well, the kit is really centered around the 5 senses. And so in the core kit, there's things that would be pleasant aromas. There would be things that actually are centering and grounding. If you put in your mouth like a really like a peppermint, like a strong peppermint candy, or a strong sour candy, or something like that, that you can kind of hold in your mouth, and it can really ground you if you're feeling really out of control. We have musical instruments or things that play music that are part of that kit. We have different types of objects that you can look at that move in different ways, that move slowly, so you can kind of watch the way they move. And there's different things inside of them. So some of them have sand in them. Some of them have other substances in them that you can watch move. So you can see it's centered around different senses, so that things that you can touch, things that you can feel that have different textures to them. But again, these have all been vetted to be appropriate for adults. This is not something that is necessarily for only for children. And we often think of, oh, these kinds of things are for kids. These are toys for kids, but we have vetted this to be appropriate also for adults. We have things that you can run your hands through that actually change the temperature of your hands and your arms. So if you're feeling tense and you run your hands through it, it will actually bring your body temperature down. So it really is very, very interesting and kind of exciting when you do it. You're like, wow, I always think it's fun the first time people do it because they're so surprised that it works. And so I enjoy walking with people around the room and have them try different things because they're doubtful. But then when they do it, they find it to be very enjoyable. And then we also have specialty items that you can order in addition to the core kit. We have things like garden boxes and ocean boxes and different themed typed boxes that are really a lot of fun. And part of the subscription, which I'm sure Ben can talk more about, is that if you participate in the certification and you do participate in the subscription, each year you get a new box with a new theme to it. So it's pretty exciting every year to kind of think, oh, gee, what am I going to get next?
Ben, let's go to that right now. We talk about the subscription model. Can you explain what that's about?
Sure. So Jody hinted at it that Oasis as a conception has been around for almost 20 years now in one form or another. And obviously in that period of time, how it's implemented internally and externally has changed and evolved. And the way it's taken form over that nearly 2 decades now is in the form of a subscription service. And this idea isn't new, right? You have all the clubs and the memberships out there now that you see advertised on TV and online for different products. So to piggyback off of this idea that not only is Oasis a set of products that you're receiving that are physical products that Jody mentioned, the real value comes in the training and understanding how do you take these almost normal, almost everyday set of products, of tools, and apply them in a way that's productive to not just working with your kids or your young adults, but also working with your professionals to help improve the overall experience in your organization from the top down. And that really dynamic, evidence-based approach we found to be the most successful. We had a survey go out to professionals. 99% of them said they would recommend Oasis to other professionals. And we really look at this as yes, it's a new way to shape an old idea, and to continue the research that we've done is really important to us. We want to make sure that our users are getting the best experience possible. And like Jody hinted at, that annual membership renewal, the box that you may get is going to be different from another organization because we're going to want your feedback on what has worked, what isn't working, what are your needs, because every organization is different. Every group of employees is different. Every group of kids is different. So to make sure we're really hitting what your needs are on a year-to-year basis with both your trainings as well as your products, that allows us to truly customize your service to meet the needs of your staff and your people.
Conversations with KidsPeace is sponsored by Spyglass Solutions at spyglasssolutions.org/conversations. Spyglass offers evidence-based consulting services to help your healthcare organization become more efficient while delivering more positive outcomes for your stakeholders. Spyglass consultants bring hundreds of years of collective experience to bear on the questions you need answered in today's healthcare environment. To find out how they can help you, visit them at spyglasssolutions.org/conversations. That's spyglasssolutions.org/conversations.
Yeah, I think it's again, the interesting evolution is that it is no longer sort of a response as more of a consistent practice to encourage the resilience of folks, and that you're partnering with an organization that can provide that evidence-based feedback so that it's always attuned to what your needs are as the subscriber, rather than the one size fits all that it could be. Ben, if folks are interested in finding out more about what we've talked about here on Oasis, the Oasis certification, the subscription, etc., how can they find out more?
Yeah, so you can go to the Spyglass Solutions website, which is www.spyglasssolutions.org. And you can throw in a /Oasis, and that'll take you directly to our Oasis homepage. You'll see a lot of information, a lot of which we discussed today, but you'll also get some contact info on how you can reach out to us to have a conversation, see if this is something that's a good fit for your organization. Something that we didn't touch on in detail yet is the idea of an Oasis certification as a facility or as an entity, and to use the Oasis brand to help promote the overall well-being and environment within a school or within a healthcare setting, and to use the name, and we want our name to be out there with different organizations and different institutions to help you to retain your staff, to bring in new clients, and allow people to understand that you're not going to devalue their self-care, that anybody that is associated with Oasis is somebody that prioritizes the well-being of their people and of their clients, and that we want to make sure that name is synonymous with self-care.
It's almost an interesting sort of analogy with what we've seen in terms of sustainability, in terms of supply chains and building, and people are getting those certifications to say, we're serious about this, and you want to be partners with someone who is going through that sort of effort to try to make sure this is done right. And like you said, ultimately they're looking at the certification of Oasis as we are concerned about the self-care of our employees, the welfare of our employees, and that makes us a better place to work, a better partner in commerce, a better supplier, et cetera, et cetera. So we want to make sure folks do understand that element of it. Thank you for bringing that in, Ben. You both have been through this particular effort. You know that we ask each of our guests to provide us a life hack. Given what we've talked about, I'm going to ask you guys for your Oasis themed or self-care themed life hack today. And I'll flip my mental coin and say we're going to start with Ben.
Thanks, Bob. So an article online that I came across, got to be close to 10 years ago now, that's kind of stuck with me. I believe it was a Forbes.com article, so I'll give them a little plug. But it was something along the lines of 10 things that ultra productive people do differently. And obviously that's a catchy headline. But one of those items that really stuck out to me that I try to bring with me every day is to touch everything only once. And it's something that keeps me sane in the craziness that is life, and that is the day-to-day work experience. What that means is when you get an email, when you start doing something, you don't put it down. You don't say, I'm going to come back to this later. You don't write half of the page and then leave the other half blank. You start something and you finish it in one sitting, so that you're not investing brain power later thinking about that thing that you still have to do. So I know it's a bit idealistic. I know it's not always something that can be done practically, but it's a goal that I have in my day-to-day life that helps me to stay focused and to stay on task, and that's to touch everything only once.
Good advice. Jody, how about you?
Well, I know that because of the type of work that a lot of us do in healthcare and behavioral healthcare and education, sometimes you can really have an anxious moment, depending on what's going on or what just happened, maybe. And so if you take your arms and you go like this and you just breathe normally, It forces you to take a deep breath. You don't have to think about it. It forces your whole lungs to be filled with air, which is what you want to do. So if you're having trouble taking deep breaths in a situation, all you need to do is cross your hands behind your head like this, and just take regular breaths, and it will fill your whole lungs with air, which is what you want to do. It will help get more oxygen to your brain, which helps you to think better in situations that are tense. So that's my life hack for you today.
You always have the best life hacks. And it's funny you mention, I mean, we didn't compare notes about this, but as you were saying that, I said, you know what? I do that as a reflex a lot. And now I can understand.
Now you know why.
I know what I'm, some side of the self-conscious is the subconscious is a little bit smarter than the conscious.
Yeah.
Not a high bar in my case, but Jody Whitcomb is Executive Director of Organizational Development and Training, Organizational Development and Quality at KidsPeace. She is the coordinator of the Oasis response team, and Ben Stiefel is principal consultant for Spyglass Solutions, the consulting practice affiliated with KidsPeace. And you can find out more about Spyglass and Oasis, as Ben said, at their website, spyglasssolutions.org. Thank you both for joining us today.
Thanks, Bob.
Thanks you.
And thank you all for joining us as well. We look forward to having you join us again for more conversations with KidsPeace. I'm Bob Martin. Until then, take care.